The two most requested albums, in terms of old music I've never listened to or reviewed, number one is Death Grips. We might get there. And the other one is Blonde by Frank Ocean. So I was thinking, I'm about to have a baby. Well, I'm not. My wife's about to have a baby really soon. So I've been thinking about what can I do to sort of put some videos up while I'm in the hospital and with the new baby. So I thought I'll do a Frank Ocean Blonde review. It seems like it's an important album. I'll get into it. And then I got this email from Andrew Ambrose Lee from the I've Been Meaning to Think About That podcast saying, well, we'd love to have you on to talk about Frank Ocean. And I know it meant a lot to him and especially to people of his generation. So I did that. I basically said, all right, I'm just not going to do a Frank Ocean video. I'm going to do my Blind on Blonde video, which, the interview, that's how I think of it. You should check it out. I'll include a link to it in the description. It's a lot of fun. That's more of your sort of traditional Professor Sky analysis with what do I bring, along with some other great co-hosts with their ideas, which frankly are probably more interesting than mine. So, and that was that, and I was bummed. I didn't mention some things, the fact I'm a French professor, and it bugs me that the album is called Blonde with an E, but the cover has Blonde without an E. I know that's on purpose. I understand he's playing around with feminine versions and masculine versions of words, and I understand that, but it reminded me of a colleague of mine who's very mad at the movie Casino Royale for having an E at the end, because casino is a masculine word. But no, I'm not going to get into anything goofy like that. I'm not really going to talk about how the basic feeling that I got just listening to this, even the first time, was just, it's the kind of album where it just sucks you up. Like you just hear it and there's something about the atmosphere, the vision. It's clear. It makes sense to me why it's put up there as one of the great albums of all time, even though I've only listened to it a handful of times at this point. So I wasn't going to do a video. And there I was talking with Andrew Ambrose and Michael and Harper and Stanley. I was really cutting it up with Michael. It's pretty fun. If you want to see another side of Professor Sky, where I'm a little bit more provocative, a little bit more of a jerk, you should check that out. And while we were talking, I was struck by lightning, okay? I just had a moment. I had an aha moment. And I make a lot of videos. I make hundreds of videos a year. And not every video comes with an aha moment, but while I was sitting there and talking, while I was listening to Andrew Ambrose discussing his memories of this album and the way this album discusses memories, I was like, Proust. And I was a little bit sheepish. And it's tough. When you're super educated and you're talking to people who you know are smart, it's a weird thing because you don't want to seem condescending. I didn't want to assume that they didn't know Proust, but also I didn't want to seem like I was shaming them if they didn't because, Americans in general don't know Proust. So you can listen to the interview as I am trying to say in a way that is neither condescending nor sort of obnoxiously simple, like, hey, is this commonly known that this is a very Proustian album? And they clowned on me a little bit, because, professor's going to professor. And then I looked it up afterwards and I can't find anything anywhere. And listen, it's driving me mad. It's driving me mad that this connection has not been made. I'm sure it's been made in public. I'm sure it's been made in private. I'm sure it's been made in private. I'm sure there have been hundreds of people who have listened to Frank Ocean's Blonde and said, oh, hey, thematically, this kind of ties into Proust. But I just have to put this out. Now, listen. I go to a lot of conferences, academic conferences. I am a perfectionist when it comes to conferences. I memorize my 20-minute talks, okay? I memorize them. I get them to exactly 20 minutes and 10 seconds, no later, sometimes 19 minutes and 50 seconds, but I do not betray my audience's trust. And the number one thing I hate is when people get up to the front of the podium and they sit there and they shuffle around papers and they say some kind of horse hockey this is just a rough draft. I'm just kind of working through things here. Because invariably whatever they're going to say is just going to be kind of boring, ill-formed, and just needing a lot more work. They just wanted their university to pay for a nice trip to Charlotte, North Carolina. That being said, the work that I'm presenting to you today on Proust and Frank Ocean is not complete. It's a bush. It is a draft. It's a first draft. It's a rough first draft because, spoiler alert, I am not a Frank Ocean expert. I've still never even heard Channel Orange, okay? this might, I've only listened to Blonde, probably 10, 15 times at this point in preparation for this. Nor am I realistically a Proust expert. Now, I studied with Dominique Julien, one of the great Proust experts. I've read a lot. I don't think I've read every single word, but the words I have read, I've read many, many times. So what I want to present to you, instead of a sort of magisterial, this is every single way, because listen, I might end up applying to a Proust conference. I'm starting to get obsessed with this idea, which is great because then I could read more Proust. But if you're getting scared, I will explain what I mean by Proust, by what I mean by Proustian, but this is my general thesis, that these works go together. That a great way to understand Proust is to tie it to Frank Ocean. And perhaps a great way to understand Frank Ocean is to tie it to Proust, especially when it comes to certain deeper truths of humanity that they unveil in their works, in particular around the themes of memory and love. A sort of cynical, clear-eyed vision of love and a very sophisticated view of memory. Now listen, I don't have all of Proust's works here. A lot of them are in my office. Some of them are here. These are just my three favorite. And I'm not going to be talking really about the first volume, even though that's sort of the most famous. I won't be talking about Albertine Disparu too much. I might mention it once. I'm really going to be focusing on the last volume, Time Regained, is how they say it in English, Le Temps Retrouvé. Okay? This is really the book where most of this whole talk is coming through, and it's on that fleeting and variable nature of love and lust and the nature of memory. And you see how much I've marked up this book, how much I've written in it. Please do that to books. I understand that e-readers are awesome and all that stuff, but if you have a book, just write all over it, okay? No one wants to read your used book anyways. Although, ironically, I bought this book used, and then I made it more used. So, there are differences, obviously, okay? I mean, there are some deeper differences. There are certain themes that are not shared in the two works. A lot of Proust's work is about jealousy, and jealousy is touched on in Frank Ocean, but is not a central theme. Drug usage is a very serious theme of Frank Ocean. It is not in Proust. There are obviously a ton of superficial differences. I mean, hell, they were born 116 years apart, okay? 1871 and 1987. They were born 9,103 kilometers, or 5,600 miles apart, Long Beach and Paris. One of them is white and one of them is black. One of them, his parents was a prominent doctor and mother was kind of like a very wealthy woman. And then Frank Ocean's parents were a minor musician and a contractor. Maybe, the easiest difference, one is an author and one is a musician. Okay, so good. We have these kind of standard differences. Maybe the most important superficial difference is that Proust wrote when he was older and Frank Ocean worked when he was younger. But there's even some superficial similarities which I think belie deeper truths. They are both extremely important gay artists. It is very important. Their work in the sort of gay canon, they're monuments. They are so important. Even though Proust, Albertine and Gilberte are the main love interests of Proust, it should not be lost on you that those names are just male names with an E at the end or an I-N-E at the end. He really was talking, for the most part, about men. He wrote a lot about homosexuality. He has an entire book called Sodom and Gomorrah. He uses the term inverts, inverti, to refer to homosexuals. And he writes a lot about the artistic process. And in his work, and this is borne out by generations of scholars, many gay men in particular feel a lot of their feelings, a lot of their sentiments in that music. I'm sorry, did I say music? In those writings. I would imagine the same is true for Frank Ocean as well. Often in the way that Proust writes is very complicated. It's famous because he has these super long sentences. And it feels at times like he's just, like he doesn't have an outline. He used the term paperole, which is like little rolls of paper. Like his writing just looks like the work of a madman. That's how Frank Ocean feels to me as well. Like some of these lyrics, I mean, I would say they're voice notes. I wouldn't say they're paperole, but I get the sense that sometimes he just shows up and just starts talking into a voice memo and just starts recording. It gives these works, both of them, this kind of expansive, unconstrained feels. Both of them use, let's be honest, rather boring lives to be the basis of an epic monument of culture, to take their little lives and make them into great art. Now, Proust was a sickly dude who hung around with a bunch of cultured snobs, falls in love a few times, and writes a book. And that book is largely a complicated look back at his life. Frank Ocean's album is about a young dude who's frankly made somewhat sickly due to substance abuse, hangs around with a bunch of people, falls in love a few times, and makes an album which is largely a look back at his life. At the same time, we have these very personal takes. There's also larger backgrounds, the history that is mentioned. So, as an example, a song like Nikes by Frank Ocean unveils the sort of consumerist hellscape that he lives in, whereas Proust is very much the transition of society from the 19th to the 20th century is entirely in. Like, you can study that transition, the pre-World War I world to the post-World War I world. Like, that transition can be seen in the works, even in specifics, like the Dreyfus Affair is mentioned quite often in Proust. World War I is mentioned quite often in Proust. Then you have, I don't know, the shooting of Trayvon Martin in Frank Ocean, and Hurricane Katrina, which is mentioned all the time in the album as well. So these are these kind of superficial similarities, but let's really get into the deeper thing, like why I had a eureka moment. Because like, this guy's gay and that guy's gay or bisexual or whatever, like that's boring, okay? That's boring. But what's so interesting is this question of memory. Now, just so you know, when I talk about Proust being an important figure when it comes to memory, neuroscientists actually study Proust because even though he was not a scientist, his descriptions of the malleable nature of memory, the sensual nature of memory, and I'll get more into that soon, like actually described phenomena which decades later they would understand when they would, cut open a brain and see all the neurons flying all over the place. Okay? So while we get into this main thing, the other ideas that I like is just the general approach, the sort of elliptical, floating nature, how hard it is to pin down everything, how everything in Frank Ocean, and I would say in Proust, is what Roland Barthes would call readerly, like as you read it, like you create meaning from it because it can be so open to interpretation. So you might be skeptical. So allow me to read you a quote from Proust. I'm assuming you're a Frank Ocean fan and you're vaguely aware of Proust, probably as a punchline, okay? I'm going to be reading the translation by Stephen Hudson that I found online. It's not the best translation. It's not the worst. I got to tell you, the reason to learn French is to read Proust in French. Like, that's one of the great reasons. The same way that, reading Shakespeare in English is like a true joy. Like, that's sort of like your reward for all that hard work. The way this man writes. Anyways, here is the line. And tell me if you don't feel this about Frank Ocean as well. An hour is not merely an hour. It is a vase filled with perfumes, with sounds, with projects, with climates. What we call reality is a relation between those sensations and those memories which simultaneously encircle us. That's what reality is. You understand? You understand the level he's working on? That there's all the senses and the projects and the time, all of that's in the vase. And what reality is all of that. And the relationship those things have to memories. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. That unique relation which the writer, or singer in this case, must discover in order that he may link two different states of being together forever in a phrase. In describing objects, one can make those which figure in a particular place. Go back to this idea. That unique relation between the current place, all of the smells and all of the feelings that you have in a current place, link that to a memory, to a previous state, and connect it together in one phrase. That is what a writer does, and that is what Frank Ocean did. That is what makes it such an amazing album. That's what makes his art so unbelievable. It's not just that he has a great voice and he sang Made in America. He's able to communicate this kind of thing. A great writer does not, in the current meaning of the word, I'm still quoting, invent it. Since it already exists in each one of us, he interprets it. The duty and task of a writer are those of an interpreter. That's the universal truth, that even though Marcel Proust is talking about his weird life and his family and all these weirdos that are around him and all that stuff, and his Paris and his 1904, whatever it is, and Frank Ocean's talking about driving on the, Pacific Coast Highway with some hot dude. It doesn't really matter because the duty that they have is they communicate that ability to connect our current experiences with our memories. According to Proust, an artist's duty is to, quote, lay hold of our life and also the life of others. For a writer's style and a painter's are matters not of technique but of vision. It is the revelation, impossible by direct and conscious means, of the qualitative difference there is in the way in which we look at the world, a difference which, without art, would remain forever each man's personal secret. Do you understand why I love art, just art, music, human creation? It's a secret. The feeling you have, the memories that you have in a certain moment that arise when you smell, a box of Cheerios, okay? The memories that arrive when you hear a song, the connection that it has to a certain moment in your life, all of the human experience and joy in life and pain and disappointment, all of that stuff that happens inside your brain, that's your personal secret. Frank Ocean and Proust knew how to make that universal and show you what it looks like. With all of these images in this very vague way where you have trouble connecting it and understanding it. I continue the quote. By art alone, we are able to get outside ourselves to know what another sees of this universe, which for him is not ours, the landscapes of which would remain as unknown to us as those of the moon. I don't know if Frank Ocean has read Proust. I don't know. Does he have a doctorate in French? He might. Dude from Chromeo does. I don't know. But I can tell you that when I just read you the description of what Proust is trying to do with his art, and when I tell you how I feel listening to Frank Ocean, I feel it's the same. You tell me in the comments if you see it. Smash like button, subscribe, AVAA if you like what you see. Okay? If you like what you see, and that means awesome video as always. Because I am, as the kids say, cooking. So please let me cook. Why not go through the album, though? I'll go through the album song by song and then integrate different ideas I have from reading Proust into it. Okay? Opening track is Nikes, great sketchy sounds, washed out synths, the pitched up voice, so otherworldly, weird and cool. All you want is the Nikes. Again, this is that way. Just sort of talking. This is that unspooling, like Proust's Paparole, the way that he writes, and it's part of the reason that's important. Because remember the secret. It's the secret that exists in you watcher. The person who's watching this, you have all these secrets inside your head, these secret little connections that connect you one place to another. Okay? These associations, they're not in a table of contents in your brain. Okay? We're not living in a rational world. We're living in the world of associations and memories and connecting the vase of the present to these memories, which makes sense that he's not writing these lyrics that rhyme very clearly and go very specifically. He is being Proustian. The reference to Trayvon I mentioned earlier changes to a real voice. I may be younger, but I'll look after you. We're not in love, but I'll make love to you. When you're not here, I'll save some for you. I'm not him, but if I'll mean something to you. I'll mean something to you. I'll mean something to you. You got a roommate. He'll hear what we do. It's only awkward if you're effing him too. The way that he writes about love and lust and relationships is the main reason, and actually the secondary reason I really connected to Proust, is that Proust is, if you can be simultaneously a complete romantic and also anti-romantic at the same time, that's how they both are. It's like love is the source of pain and joy, but at the same time there's this sense of distance, this cool, calculated understanding that a lot of these experiences that feel so big and so meaningful at the time are just kind of whatever. Do you get that? Do you understand that not everybody writes like that? Not every singer sings about former relationships in such a way where you get the sense that they're like observing them with a kind of cold distance and sort of like, you know, it's awkward, I guess, if you have a roommate, you know? And as we'll see, as I quote Proust later, we're really there. I just love the vibes on this album. That's the other thing, like, if I wanted to get like really sort of four-dimensional here, I could talk about the form of Blonde, its strange changing nature, its sort of like constant modular shifting around, and how you never really quite feel totally grounded, and tie that into Proust, because that's the other great thing about Proust. When you're reading Proust, you never quite feel like you're really there, because these sentences are so long and they go on, and he's bringing up all these other things, and then, oh wait, no, actually wait, we're back there again. Next track is called Ivy, some guitar, reverb on there, it's nice, and here's a love story. I could hate you now, it's quite alright to hate me now, I ain't a kid no more, we'll never be those kids again, we drive to Sid's. I'd had the X6 back then, no matter what I did, my waves wouldn't dip back, everything sucked back then, we were friends. So this is one of the most important aspects, you know. So this is called Remembrance of Things Past, okay, that's the name of his entire cycle. It's actually, if you speak French, it's actually called In Search of Lost Time. That's actually what it's called. In Search of Lost Time. Everything in this, almost everything in this Frank Ocean album feels like it's a search for lost time. Now listen, the things he's recounting in here are like going to little beach resorts and going to like see a singer and walking around with his mommy and daddy in this mythical town in rural France, okay? But it's this mixture of a romantic view of how things were, simultaneously with an anti-romantic view of the reality, because that's the problem. Everything sucked back then. He's talking about we drive to Sid's, had the X6. Who knows who Sid is? I don't care who Sid is. You can tell me in the comments. You can go to Lyric Genius and find out who Sid is. I don't care. The same way I don't care who Charlus is, okay? I don't care who these people actually are. Bergot, okay? What matters is that everything sucked back then, because that's the truth. That's the truth. Nostalgia is a terrible thing. It's a very dangerous thing, and it's an inevitable thing, that you're going to think about your life in that way. And to play with the truth of nostalgia is that it's wonderful and terrible at the same time. It's just all right there. This is what Frank Ocean said about his own work. I'm quoting a lot from Lyric Genius. They have a little like thing there, like what is the album all about? It's a good synthesis of the takes on what the album's about. Saved me some time. Thank you, Lyric Genius. True story, one of those conferences I went to, I talked to someone who was friends with Mabad, who was starting Rap Genius, and I talked to him on the phone. He was explaining the project, and he's like a very hyper sort of tech bro dude. He was like, I gotta get you on there to like work on French rap. And I was an idiot. I didn't say anything, so. Anyways, if you ever meet me in person, ask me a question about that. I have a very funny personal story about that night. So anyways, this is what Frank Ocean says. That was my version of collage or bricolage. He's using French words, folks. Point proven. How we experience memory sometimes, it's not linear. We're not telling the stories to ourselves. We know the story. We're just seeing it in flashes overlaid. In my head, Hengel McCringleberry just caught a ball in the end zone and spiked the football and did a little dance, okay? Did I just win this argument that I'm having with myself? Flashes overlaid, this is the way that Proust describes memories. Let's read more from Proust. Let's talk more about Proust and memory, okay? I had this back here. I don't love this, but I have it, okay? It's fine. It's all in English, and I don't like the way they integrate text. He's most famous. The thing he's most famous for is for the Madeleine. And so, listen, when I took that class with Dominique Julien at the University of California, Santa Barbara, I was a fresh-faced grad student. It was my first semester. I had to learn about Roland Barthes and Proust. I'd never read a single word of Proust. I didn't know a single thing about Proust. And the first thing she did is she got us to sit around a table, all 12 of us, and said, so what are your impressions of Proust? What do you know about Proust? I was scared. I didn't know a damn thing. I was 26 years old. I didn't know a damn thing. And everybody was just laughing about the Madeleine. The Madeleine. I didn't know what they were talking about. Are they talking about the Jacques Brel song? Madeleine, n'aime pas ça, no? Were they talking about the Église de la Madeleine that was designed during the Napoleonic era? I don't know. They talked about Madeleine, the weird little girl that's in all those stories. No, they're talking about the food, okay? The little dessert, the sweet kind of almondy dessert that exists. And this is what Proust is most famous for. So if you have to know one thing about Proust, this is the thing to know. The beginning of Swann's Way, okay? The beginning of this book, the first volume in Remembrance of Things Past, in The Search for Lost Time, he tells this whole story about wanting his mommy to give him a kiss goodnight. It's beautiful. It's an amazing story. I wrote an entire paper about how his asthmatic nature was actually what created his dependency on his mother, because I was asthmatic and dependent on my mother. It was a great paper. She gave me an A-. It's okay. She was a great teacher. Maybe, I don't know. I had such great teachers, but she gave me an A-. I was crossing the street in Korea, in Seoul, when I checked my phone and saw that I got an A-. That's how much it bugs me, because in grad school you don't get A-. It's terrible. Anyways, so we're all laughing about Madeleine, and so what happens is he says in the beginning of this story, the only thing I remember of my childhood is wanting to get a kiss from mommy during a dinner party, and she wouldn't come up and give me a kiss goodnight. That's all I remember. I love my mammy. I love my mammy, okay? Little Lord Fauntleroy here. And he says that's all he remembers of his youth. But what he says is that actually changed. And that changed when one random day, he visited his aunt and he had a Madeleine. And as he eats the Madeleine and dips it in the tea, the smell comes back to him. And that smell connects him to a time when he was younger in his youth. And that smell, that one time having a Madeleine, that one specific moment in his adulthood unlocked his entire childhood and would become the basis of the thousands of pages that you're about to read now. It is called an involuntary memory. And it's proven by science. Smells are the strongest memory recollection. Okay? Seriously, if you could make it smell like the Harvard Square tea station in Boston, you just get the Dunkin' Donuts mixed with the popcorn, mixed with the smell of the train, that smell could take me right back to when I was 14 or 15. The smell of an Oreo takes me back to when I was 5 or 6. The smell of weed takes me back to my entire childhood, okay? Smells are so powerful, and it's this involuntary memory. It's these flashes. So that's why Proust is so famous. It's because of this Madeleine, because that's the way that memory works, and he actually described it. But let's go further on with what he says and tie it into this concept of this bricolage that Frank Ocean is talking about. Proust says, it is true that these changes have occurred to us without us being aware of them. This is talking about the changes in memory and how things happened. But the distance between the memory which suddenly returns and our present personality, so how we are now versus our memory, as similarly between two memories of different years and places, is so great that it would suffice, apart from their specific uniqueness, to make a comparison between them impossible. That like the actual distance between myself now and the myself that smells the Harvard tea station with Dunkin' Donuts mixed in with the popcorn maker and the smell of, I assume, brake grease from the trains? Yes, if a memory, thanks to forgetfulness, has been unable to contact any tie, to forge any link between itself and the present, if it has remained in its own place of its own date, if it has kept its distance, its isolation in the hollow of a peak of a mountain, in the hollow of a valley or on the peak of a mountain, it makes us suddenly breathe an air new to us just because it is an air we have formerly breathed, an air purer than that which poets have vainly called heavenly. Meaning, if there's a memory that you can have and have it totally separated from your day-to-day life, not a memory that you have all the time, but a memory that is completely separate, maybe a toy. You see a, I don't know, Bakugan or something. I'm trying to think what you young people might have played with, okay? Maybe you haven't thought about Bakugan in like 10 years, and you see one of the little things, and then you remember the first time that you saw the ball spin and catch on the card, and you remember it opening up, and you remember that you were outside of a target in the same time that, you know, your dad had that cancer scare, and the kind of fear and the joy that you had are all kind of wrapped up in that little Bakugan that you just happened to see, okay? I hope your dad's okay. But that's all in the Bakugan. That's all in the moment. That moment, the vase of right now, is connected to that target outside of Topeka. Like, we all had this moment, right? I just described a totally human moment that you can completely relate to, despite the fact I made it completely up out of my head. Just like I could have made up the Harvard Square train station, but if you know, you know. You know what that smelled like. Nothing in the world smelled like the Harvard train station in 1995. This heavenly air that we breathe offers that deep sense of renewal, only because it has been breathed before, insomuch as the true paradises are paradises we have lost. Ocean by Frank Ocean's album Blonde is an album of lost paradises, of these memories, of the way things used to be, these connections that he has to specific moments, white Ferrari, these things that have changed and been and are no more, and he's connecting to them in these overlapping layers and memories. I said this is a rough draft, but I'm pretty happy with it so far. Sorry, that's arrogant. I'm happy. Do you know how happy I am to have this channel? I just did that More Mother video where I connected it to like where I explained the whole history of abolition in England. Man, I love having an excuse to think about all this stuff. Okay, so Pink and White is the next song, produced by Pharrell. Just okay, Pharrell gets his flowers. He needs more. Great lagging piano notes. And then again, remember life, remember how it was, climb trees, Michael Jackson, all ends here. This is very, very Proustian, okay? This is very, very the way he's describing his life, and especially in terms of its intertextuality, you know, describing his life and bending up his Nikes and remembering all the things that he did when he was younger in his little life, and the simultaneous sort of like innocence of youth, but also never forget, never ever look at a child and say they're innocent, because they're not. Children are terrible people. And I know, I am one and I've had them. Okay? Children are not innocent. They've been exposed to the world. They have terrible thoughts. I used to have terrible thoughts as a child, and so did you. We're not innocent. Children are not innocent. They still need to be protected, but not their innocence. You can't protect innocence. We have human brains. Anyways, I really enjoy that, both in Proust and in Frank Ocean, a sort of clear-eyed view of the selfishness and the cruelty that can be in youth. We're not all just sweet little puppies. And puppies aren't innocent either. Another thing that fascinates me is the way that he's describing the beautiful sunset. And I believe, based on what I read, that he's describing the sunset during Katrina. What kind of monster do you have to be to describe a beautiful sunset while thousands of people are dying and tens of thousands of people are being unhoused by such an unholy failure of social engineering, a failure of engineering, a racist structural problem that created all those deaths, but also there was a hurricane involved. To have all those people die and you just turn it into this sort of effete vision of what it, what it looks like how beautiful it is. You'll never guess who else did that. Proust. Proust describes air raids in World War I France, and he describes them standing on a balcony, looking out and thinking about how all the ships look just like figures in Wagner's opera. More intertextuality, okay? He talks about how beautiful it was, that this is the only way to get Wagner in Paris. He's in the middle of the death and destruction that is surrounding him. And he takes a second to compare it to a painting by El Greco, The Burial of Count Orgaz. It's one of my favorite passages in this. And it's another example that, just because there's terrible things happening, in your memory, you can still remember the beautiful things that pop up. This is sort of neither here nor there, but it happens to be, I found a passage where Proust tries to describe a sunset as well. I don't have the English translation of this, so you're just going to have to roll with me here on this, okay? If I really had a soul of an artist, what pleasure would I not have before this curtain of trees lit by the setting sun, before these little purple flowers that go almost to the foot of this wagon, that I can, of which I could count the petals, and which I keep to describe the color as I could with so many beautiful letters. Because can one hope to transmit to the reader a pleasure that one has not felt? Anyways, he's trying to describe these flowers. He's trying to describe the sunset. And he's having trouble doing it because he's trying to describe something that we might not have felt. Next track is called Be Yourself. If you want to hear me talk about that, go on the I've been meaning to listen to that podcast. I talk a fair amount about it there. I do enjoy this message, sluggish, lazy, stupid, unconcerned. I do like how this ties into the mother figure, but we'll be talking more about the mom soon. Next track is Solo, produced by James Blake. Jesus Christ, this album is good. Organ sound, kind of tripping. This is probably my favorite song on the album. Kind of like modern gospel. There's hell, there's a bull and a matador dueling in the sky. It's just like what I was talking about with Proust describing the air raid, It's nice kind of how that goes here. And it's about the value of being alone and being lonely. And this is another thing which, again, Proust talks a fair amount. Proust lives a fairly lonely life. He's often quite alone, and part of the reason why is because he's a difficult person to be with, because he's very jealous, but also because he always seems to see through other people. I find a similarity here, but I'm not going to go too far into it. Skyline 2, a lot about this just summer, just the joy in the summer, and summer is not as long as it used to be. Every day counts like crazy. I can't not share it with you. Now that we're on this journey together, I can just inform you that probably even more important than his childhood home of Cambrai, the fictional town in France, even more important than Paris, the real place in France, is the mythical, imagined port city of Baalbek, or coastal city of Baalbek, okay? It's where he'd spend his summers. So much of the search for lost time takes place in this summer stay, and just his obsession with young girls in flower, or probably dudes. Falls in love with this one girl, and they have a relationship together, and he later discovers that she was a lesbian the whole time. I'm telling you, the whole book series is just, anyways, it's very, very, it's really great. And it's great because it's sort of like describing this world, describing this time, like summer is not as long as it used to be. Obviously, it is as long as it used to be, but that's the way that time plays with you and the way that memories work. And in a way, it's sort of about the kind of weaknesses of truth, because I can tell you that the summer of 1993 was shorter than the summer of 2024, despite the fact that they were exactly the same amount of time. That's because that's how I experience time. And I love this because time and memory are often connected. Let's read some Proust here. Okay. If you want to follow along in French, it's on page 183 here. I should be telling you that the whole time, but you know. For the truths which the intelligence apprehends through direct and clear vision in the daylight world are less profound and less necessary than those which life has communicated to us unconsciously through an intuition which is material only so far as it reaches us through our senses and the spirit which we can elicit. So anyways, that's where the truth is. It's not in our intelligence, it's in this unconsciously intuited information. Self-control, nice kind of pitched voice here. Sort of reminds me of John Frusciante a little bit. I'll be the boyfriend in your wet dreams tonight. Fortunately, in the world that Frank Ocean lives in, he can be more out than Proust was. What he says was this about this song. And again, just if you're a Proustian out there, you're just going to hear this and go, Sky, you can't have been the first person to say this. I don't know. Please, somebody correct me. Someone show me. I looked it up. I went to the database. I put in Proust, Frank Ocean. I got crickets. This is what Frank Ocean says. That was written, the song was written about someone who I was actually in a relationship with who wasn't an unrequited situation. He said it was mutual. It was just we couldn't really relate. We weren't really on the same wavelength. One of the most famous parts of this is the second section. It's a little love story all about this guy named Swan, who's a friend of the family. And it ends very famously with the following lines, which I really should have. Anyways, I should have written them down. But listen, I'm doing a lot of work here. I'm waiting on a baby, all that stuff. And let me see here. To think, I wasted years of my life, that I wanted to die, that I had my biggest love for a woman that I did not like, who was not my type. That's the end of the love story. Does that not feel like that could be so many of the love stories in here? Another later, again, if you're following along, page 327 of Time Regained. For these reasons and many others, the fact that we experience our greatest sorrows with women who are not our type is not only due to that derisive illusion which permits the realization of happiness under the form that pleases us the least. So he's very obsessed with this idea that like we end up finding pleasure in being with people who are not our type, which is sort of what a lot of the album is about. The next track is called Good Guy. A nice kind of voice note style lyrics again to the paperole. This whole thing makes me realize that I love Dijon, the singer, but I guess a lot of what I like about Dijon is stuff that he might have gotten from Frank Ocean, or there's just a similarity there. Kind of a sad story about a hookup that he wants to go further. Leads nicely into Nights, the kind of harmonium sounds. What is this? My family had the Acura. Right. Yeah. So this one is sorry, I'm trying to find my notes. I write my notes without my glasses, so sometimes I say weird stuff here. All this kind of like memory, these very specific memories. Again, he's talking about things that are very specific, and that's a trick. That's a trick that great artists can do. They can make their story so specific that they're universal. So he's talking about having to transfer campuses because of Katrina, and even though that's not going to happen to any of us, it still helps us to situate properly in the place so that these larger themes can play out in a landscape that's more precise for us. Every day, every night, every day. And this whole thing about how like the day replaces the night and the night replaces the day. Okay, then we get the solo reprise with Andre 3000. I don't know how to fit this into my general idea, except that he's including different artists who matter to him, and a lot of what matters to Proust is other artists and the intertextuality, which we'll get to more in a second. Next song is called Pretty Sweet. Pretty Sweet. Loud noises, warbled voice, fast drum, all that. But this is what's interesting to me. The way this is described by Genius, I think, is a way that we can describe Proust. I'm just going to replace anything that has to do with music with writing. The literary experimentation sets the tone for the words, which seem to purposely lack structure and further accentuate the chaotic and asymmetrical flow of the book. The sonic experimentation sets the tone for the lyrics, which seem to purposely lack structure and further accentuate the chaotic and asymmetric flow of the song. With all of Ocean, all of Blonde, turning into Trump, Tim Apple, Frank Blonde, I can say all that asymmetry and the lack of structure, but there's structure there. The whole album is super well structured. It has a real flow to it. It has a flow, but not necessarily a structure. Can things have a flow without a structure? Then we get to Facebook Story, and this is interesting because it's Sebastian, the producer who did that album Thirst that I reviewed, and no one saw my analysis of that album. Man, Sebastian's a great producer. Super aggro. It's all about jealousy and Facebook, and I like it. It's interesting. As Andrew Ambrose pointed out, it's the thing that dates the album the most. But the jealousy that's in here, it's like this is the one time where I really feel jealousy is a theme in this album, and jealousy is a huge theme in Proust. So, Close to You, totally wild. There's like Stevie Wonder performed the song They Long to Be Close to You, which if you don't know, that's my song with my wife. That's our song. That's my ringtone. My wife calls me, why do birds suddenly appear every time my baby screams? Okay? So that's how much I love that song. I prefer Isaac Hayes' version, but the Carpenter's version is just so iconic. You just can't get around it. But I didn't even know Stevie Wonder did a version of this song on TV with a talk box. I watched it today, and it made me cry because it was so beautiful, because Stevie Wonder is such a great musician, and Burt Bacharach and Hal David are such great songwriters, you know? Okay, so why did he do it? This is according to Frank Ocean, according to Frank Blonde. With Close to You is a similar thing, only without the nostalgia. I was living in a hotel and remember listening to it and really nailed to the floor by Stevie Wonder's interpretation. The version moved into my favorite song of all time list. And, so he's connecting, and this is very connected to the general idea of what is called intertextuality. If you are in grad school, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not in grad school, here comes the hack. The term intertextuality was developed by Bulgarian-born French thinker Julia Kristeva. I think she was born in Bulgaria, but she's a French thinker. France claims everybody when they can. The idea, it simply means a text that makes reference to another text. And again, text can be anything. Text can be music, art, whatever. Okay? So, intertextuality in Proust is so great that it's hard to read, because he'll make reference to a George Sand book, called François de Champy, and if you don't know that, you don't know what he's talking about. He makes reference to 1001 Nights. He makes reference to Wagner. He makes reference to El Greco, like I just said. Say reference again. I dare you. I double dare you. He makes references to all sorts of stuff all over the place so consistently that you just end up just getting lost. And that's what Frank Ocean's doing here. He's being intertextual. He's forcing you to go to another place, because interacting with Stevie Wonder performing Close to You on a talk box is simultaneously the exact same thing as listening to Frank Ocean. It's the same thing. There's no difference between them. This is exactly the same thing. Exactly the same quality, the same emotion, the same feeling. I cry listening to Frank Ocean. I cry listening to Stevie Wonder. It totally works. But also, it's different decades, different artists, different history, different everything. That's the joy of intertextuality. And this album by Frank Ocean is stupid intertextual. It really requires a lot of conversation between different things, between different connections, to the point where when you watch him perform it live, and there's a version of him performing it live with Brad Pitt. Why Brad Pitt on stage? Is he the blonde? Is Brad Pitt the blonde in Blonde? Man. he goes into the song Never Could Say Goodbye, which is what Stevie Wonder does on his original version, you know? So he's really trying to take you back there. Let my mind run underneath warm jets. I run my hand through what's left, but we're getting older, baby. Don't have much longer, baby. That is one of the other aspects of Proust that's so important, is that he started writing when he was older, and he has that sort of like ability to think. Now, listen, Frank Ocean was only 28, but he's writing about a lot of young things, a lot about the passage of time. Next song is called White Ferrari, the only song I knew because the dudes from Black Country New Road told me this was the inspiration for Snow Globes. So it's a great song. I played it, and every single time I play it in my house, my daughter goes, Dad, are you trying to get me to cry? Because every time she listens to White Ferrari, she cries, which is great. This is what I'm talking about, the memories. So when I hear the song White Ferrari, you know it's going to happen. I'm going to remember the summer. I'm going to remember the time I tried to talk my wife into letting me rent a white Ferrari so I could do this video in a white Ferrari, and then on my secondary channel do a video about the I used to be a piece of shit sloppy steak sketch from I Think You Should Leave, because he has a white Ferrari in that sketch. Live for New Year's Eve, white Ferrari. But my wife said we have more important things to do, like get ready for a baby and prepare for the next semester. This morning, she wasted my time. She replaced all the outlets because we have a serious fire hazard. We could have been renting a white Ferrari. Anyways, I'll have all these things connected. I'll have all these, just connecting these things. It's just beautiful. But this whole song is still intertextual. You know, they have to pay Paul McCartney and John Lennon's estate every single time because it's tying in here, there, and everywhere. And this song just has everything that this album has. Bad luck to talk on these rides, mind on the road, your dilated eyes watch the clouds float, white Ferrari, had a good time, sweet 16, how was I supposed to know I was 16? Just voice to text. He says voice to text, and that's what this is. This is text to speech. This is just talking and thinking. This is just him trying to capture lost time. He's just capturing lost time. He's remembering these moments and what they are and how they feel. And it connects to him now, and it's so clear how it connects to him now. I get the sense in a lot of these stories that he's telling, there's a vague sense of disappointment. There's like happiness, but a lot of the time there is not like a lot of happy loves. As Georges Brassens would say, il n'y a pas d'amour heureux. Amour heureux. There's no happy love. This is as good of a place as any to bring up another quote, which I think is germane to this album from Proust, page 184 of Le Temps Retrouvé, if you're following along. If you have this folio version, more about... Did you know this is a first edition Proust? It is. This is a genuine first edition. I'll explain at the end of the video. I well knew the disappointment of a journey and the disappointments of love were not different. I'm sorry, I'm reading this poorly. I knew well that the disappointment of a journey and the disappointment of love were not different disappointments, but varying aspects which, according to the conditions to which they apply, are afflicted upon us by the impotence, difficult for us to realize, of material pleasure and effective action. Again, reflecting on that extra temporal delight caused by whether I had too clearly proved the impossibility of expecting from reality that which was within myself. Extratemporal delight caused by whether I had too clearly proved the impossibility of expecting from reality that was within myself. When you try to find joy in love or in a voyage, you are very often disappointed. And that's because it proves that the reality that you're looking for is in yourself and not outside. I feel like Frank Ocean's saying that too. But what do I know? I have to have a sip of water. Next song is called Siegfried. Cool, smoky, and weird, and I'm not brave over and over again. I'm not brave. Proust is also not brave. I think it's important to be not brave. Weird speech at the end, almost kind of like a little rap. An interesting thing I'll just kind of point out here is that based on lyric genius, you know, people like, oh, this is definitely, I don't know, like Willie Clarion or some kind of male model. Willie, and then it was the name of a French fashion brand. Willie Clairol? Willie Chanel. I think Willie Chanel, is that right? Anyways, some male model who this is definitely about. And you can also do that on Proust. You can sort of point out like, oh, Albertine was really this man, and Gilberte was really this man, and when he makes reference to Bergotte, that was in reference to this person, and this singer was that singer. It's called a roman à clé, which means it's a Roman, a novel with a key to it. I hate that stuff. I don't care. I just like the art. Anyways, another thing worth mentioning, Siegfried is one of the Norse warriors in the opera that Proust mentioned in World War I. Next track's called Godspeed. Gentle organ, his real voice is nice. I will always love you, but I let go of my claim on you. This is that real clear-eyed view of nature and the difficulty of love. And it's sort of like, this whole album is like, it's like remembering not being heartbroken. I don't know. Here's what Proust said about it. I realized also that the suffering I'd formerly experienced with Gilberte in realizing that our love has nothing to do with the being who inspires it. Meaning that the way that we suffer in love has nothing to do with the people who we're suffering for. It has everything to do with ourselves. It's true. Even a deeper pleasure, such as that which I might have felt when I loved Albertine, was in reality only perceived by contrast with my anguish when she was no longer there. For when I was sure she would return, as on the day from when she came back from the Trocadero, I only experienced a vague boredom. This is a pretty interesting thing. I don't know if Frank Ocean really goes into this. I think you can read it a little bit, but really for Proust, it's like however uncertain he is in his connection to the women, that's how much he cares about them. And then when he knows about the women who he's having sex with, when he knows that it's all cool and it's all fine, then he basically loses interest. Happiness serves hardly any other purpose than to make unhappiness possible. I don't think that has to do with Frank Ocean. I just think that's a great quote. Final track is Future Free. Piano, drum machine in the back. Now I'm making 400, 600, 800K, mama. Stand on my feet, mama. Play these songs. It's therapy, mama. The mama boy. Okay, Proust is a mama's boy. This feels like the way he's talking to his mom is there. Now, I know that the voice thing earlier is not actually his mother talking to him. But I also know that, was it in this song or the last song, there's a gospel singer who's a singer that his mother likes. Like there is an aspect to which there is a sort of mama's boy undercurrent, I would say, that I read into Frank Ocean. And, you know, this whole book starts off with this just absolutely wonderful passage where the number one thing that our man Marcel wants is a kiss from mommy. I mentioned this on the podcast, but this whole thing just reminds me of that point in Kanye's concerts back in the Yeezus era when he would just have the Runaway playing and he would just kind of go on his little rants. This feels like that. I ain't on your schedule. I ain't on no schedule. I ain't had me a job since 2009. I ain't on no sales floor. That's also just the way that the way that Frank Ocean exists in current thought is that he's just this like lazy dude who's not doing anything and hasn't done anything since 2016. And like he doesn't have a job. And there's something about that, which again connects to my sense of Proust, who obviously wasn't lazy. He wrote thousands of pages, but like he took him a long time to write and he spent a lot of his time in bed and he definitely didn't have a job. He definitely didn't have a job. He was not on no sales floor either, you know? And there's something about the position of the artist as sort of like a retreating, sort of uncontingent, kind of flowing figure. My final notes on the whole thing have to do with what really connected me to Proust. It was hearing Andrew Ambrose Lee discuss what the album meant to him. That's what really blew my mind. Because he was describing it in the way that like I might describe, okay, computer, like the way I felt listening to that for the first time on Newbury Street, getting into Ben's car because he found an awesome parking spot on there at midnight, listening to Airbag for the first time, and like listening to that album and connecting to it like lyrically and musically in my travels, and just like the sense that I had that like somehow my life was being explained and mediated through this music. Or 2 years later, I'd have that same feeling listening to Hank Williams Sr., you know, like this sense that we have of like how music can connect us to memory in a way. And what's great is that Proust and Frank Ocean are making art about memory itself. So when Andrew Ambrose is remembering, I don't know, how important it was when this album came out, what he was doing, or you know, like how, like, the vase of the present that's filled, our senses that are filled with all these different times and stories and projects, are still always going to be connected to the involuntary memories that come up with this music, which make this music itself much like I remember being in that little conference room trying to figure out what the hell Proust was talking about, because I didn't know what an aubépine was. It's a hawthorn, but I didn't know. I forgot to look it up. So I'm sitting in there and I'm talking about the aubépine, and I don't remember what that is. Like, I remember being freshly married. I remember being in my first semester of grad school. I remember those moments and the way we connected. And that's what I want to talk about. Why I told you I have a full set of first edition Prousts. Because according to Proust, the first edition of any book is the first edition you read. Because that has the sensual connection. This right here, this Monet painting that they use as a device, this is my connection. I quote Proust. And he's going to talk about Francois Le Champy, which is a book that he used to read when he was younger. Okay, I'll just say Michael Jackson. I'll replace it with Thriller by Michael Jackson, okay, to make it more Frank Ocean-y. More than this, a thing we saw at a certain period, a book we read. I'll change book to album. More than this, a thing we saw at a certain point, an album we listened to, does not remain forever united only with what was then around us. It remains just as faithfully one with us as we then were, and can only be recovered by the sensibility restoring the individual as he then was. If ever in thought I pick up Thriller by Michael Jackson in my library, immediately a child rises within me and replaces me, who alone has the right to read that title, Thriller by Michael Jackson. That's how memory works. That's my thesis. Hey, I got it around an hour. Not too bad. Not 20 minutes. I'll tell you what, if I ever give this talk, I'm going to have to get this really down. My Patreons? I don't have my Patreon list, do I? Ah, damn it. My Patreon list. Whoa, Jesus. My Patreon list. Oh, I do. I do have my Patreon list. All right, sweet. I just want to thank my Patreons. Was that exciting? Did you think you were falling? They give me money. I want to buy the Boys Don't Cry magazine, but I'm just trying to find it for not $300. But I'm very interested in that as an artifact of this album. You know, I didn't talk about like the history of this album. I didn't talk about Endless. I didn't talk about any of that stuff. You know why? Because you got to listen. I've been meaning to listen to that podcast. Have you been meaning to listen to that? I've been meaning to listen to this podcast. Also, I asked any patrons if they wanted a specific shout out. Kat Elias asked for it. Apparently their wife is a fan of Proust. Jack Dyson and Ethan Jorge also asked. I'm just going to check right here, make sure no one else asked for a shout out, because, you know, I want to give them the time to do that. Let's see. Porter Robinson and or, okay, 8. So maybe there's one more new here. Yes, Andy Scudder, I got you. I got you, Andy. Just under the end. All right. So anyways, I hope you enjoy Proust. If you've never read Proust, I hope you enjoy Frank Ocean. If you've never read Frank Ocean, I hope you can just spend the rest of your day and the rest of your life thinking about this relationship between memory and the present. Until next time, there's the camera.